Dr. Mindy. Oh, so looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you know what? My husband Craig, he has been a hardcore faster for many, many
Nice.
years. And during when he first got into it, I was pregnant and postpartum and then pregnant again. So I didn't get into it until kind of recently. And oh my God, I'm really finding it incredible, especially like I'm someone who has had insulin resistance for many years. And so really always on top of my bloods. And yeah, so loved your first book and so excited for your cookbook coming out.
Thank you.
Eat
Thank
Like
you.
a Girl. Cannot wait. So I have a lot of questions for you, but I want to begin because obviously my work is all about the soul and spirit. And I know you've just been in Turkey and places like that, which, you know, it's a great example where a lot of the culture fast as part of spiritual practice or culture. So tell me about that. Like from your perspective, like what's the spiritual side of fasting?
Oh, I love that we're starting with this question because it's my classic statement that I tell everybody is most people will come to fasting for weight loss, but I'm asking people to stay for all the other benefits. And one of the benefits that doesn't get talked enough about is the spiritual benefit. So we first have to start with honoring that every major religion has some form of fasting built into it. And I think that there's two reasons for that. The easiest way to look at our relationship to food is that when you're eating, you're bringing an energy into your body. If you are eating toxic food, you're bringing a toxic energy into your body. If you're bringing what I really encourage people to do, which is eat nature's food, you're still bringing a live energy into your body, and your body has to integrate that energy. And so a lot of times that energy gives you energy, gives you mental clarity. Sometimes it makes you feel sluggish. Sometimes it makes you feel inflamed, but it shifts the feeling that you have inside. When you are in a fasted state, all of that goes away. There's no outside energy coming in. And so what I've noticed personally, what we've noticed in our community is that there becomes this communication that you get with your body. And you get to decide, like, is that your soul? Is that what I refer to as innate intelligence? I think we do not give enough credit for the intelligence that is always running us. Or maybe it's your connection to a higher power in whatever your belief system is. But without the noise of food, there becomes a different whisper that you can hear. And if you're willing to sit and listen, there are so many insights. I will give you an example. When my daughter about 5 years ago was off in college, she was going through a hard time. She had gotten in with some wrong people. I was really worried about her. I was trying to decide if I needed to go pick her up and like bring her back home. It was just, I couldn't connect to her. I couldn't find the solution as a mother for her. And so my brain was like, well, just go into a fast. And so I went into a 3-day water fast, and all the mama noise that was like, oh my God, she's going to kill herself. She's with the wrong people. She's doing all the wrong things. All that started to go away. And I started to hear less and less of the worry brain. And on day 3 of the water fast, I heard this: she's going to be okay. Just be patient. She's going to be okay. And it became this real inner knowing that I had of like, okay, this is all going to work out fine. And do you know that on the day I broke the fast, the 4th day, she called and asked if she could come home. And there was like this beautiful connection to something that I wasn't able to access when I was eating food. So whether you're trying to access a higher power or you're trying to hear the beautiful language of your body, when you take food out of the equation, there is a different voice that you tap into.
That's such a beautiful analogy of, I often talk about, go in for your answers. Don't be bombarded with all of the noise outside. And I'd never, I'd experienced that with fasting, but I'd never thought of it as in like, what you're ingesting as well,
Yeah.
My first experience with fasting was, I was in my 20s and where was I? Oh no, I don't know if I was living in London or Australia at the time, but I went to Thailand and I went to a retreat where we did, I think it was a 5-day fast, and we had some broth, like maybe once a day. I think we had coconut once or twice a day, and then a whole lot of tablets, right? And the thought of doing it for me was like, oh my God, how am I possibly going to go through this? I've always had like anxiety around and I think it was because blood sugar was always a thing for me around what's like that kind of panic, right? And the thing I wanted to talk to you about was, I remember it was on like maybe day 3 or 2 where a lot of anger and grief came up. Tell me about that. Yeah. So does it help you process that stuff and access that stuff?
I am so happy you asked this, because that was my experience when I first started fasting. So much anger came up. And I also really got clear in my relationship with food. And I could hear actually my mother's voice, who really taught me that, oh, you're having a bad day, go ahead, let's sit down and have a meal together. And I started to associate food with mother's love. And so when I went into a fasted state, I was like, I'm angry, I'm irritable. This is in the beginning. Fasting gets so much easier the more you do it. But all of those dysfunctional relationships started to be revealed to me, and all the messaging that was given to me. And anger was one of them. And there's a couple of reasons why I think anger shows up. It would be very easy for us to be like, well, anger's showing up because you're not eating. I do not believe it's that, because I've seen sadness show up. I've seen people remember traumas that can show up. So there's 2 ways to look at this. One, when we metabolically switch into what I call the fat burning state, it's also known as your ketogenic energy system. That system and the energy you get from there only happens in the absence of food. And what your body does is it takes the fat and it burns it for energy to make a ketone. The organ that it controls all of that is the liver. And the emotion attached to the liver is anger. So you are literally cleaning up your liver, you're relying on the liver, and the liver is going to speak to you. Just like we've heard the lungs are grief. There's each organ has a different emotional system, but the liver is definitely anger. So that's one aspect. The second aspect that I think is really interesting, and we don't have science on this, but after watching millions of people fast, this feels really true to me. And it's based off of Bruce Lipton's work, which is when we are looking at cells, the outer part of the cellular membrane gets inflamed for many reasons: toxic food, chronic cortisol, but also toxic thoughts. So your thoughts are literally on the outside of your cells. When you start to fast, you stimulate something called autophagy. And autophagy is this inner intelligence inside the cell that goes, okay, food hasn't come in, nutrients haven't come in, we need to become a better cell. And so it starts to clean up all aspects of the cell and push what no longer serves it out of the cell. And I believe that one of the things that it pushes out are these negative thoughts that get attached to the outside of the cell that causes cellular inflammation. Because you ask anybody, and the longer you fast, the more you access this kind of deep cellular healing. And people that go into 3-day, 5-day water fast, there is so many emotions that come to the surface that are there for you to heal, because it's a purging of these toxins that have really gummed up the cell and made the cell an inflammatory state.
Well, that's so interesting, especially like the lens that I'm putting through it is also like So one thing that I'm so passionate about is how at a cellular level we each existed inside our grandmother's womb, and her grandmother, and her grandmother, all the way back to the original. And what I'm seeing in my work is a lot of people processing ancestral trauma right now. Ooh. And I know for me, when I became a mum, and it was around COVID time as well, it was also when I discovered I'd had some chronic illnesses that I could not get to the bottom of, but the process of building life within me, having my baby through the huge, severe initiation of birth. And then I found this amazing functional medicine doctor who was able to help support my body in knowing what I was actually allergic to. It was as if my cells were no longer under attack anymore. Yeah. But as a result of having that safety within my physical body, so much started moving through. And I've seen it with so many of my students with this ancestral thing. I don't know if it's because, like, as a planet, we are going through something extreme right now, a possible rebirth. Yeah. And or many of us are actually have the privilege of having a level of safety. And so it is processing through our body. And so I'm curious, do you think that fasting has the potential to reset things like that?
Yeah. And I want to go deep into this thought. This is such a fun conversation for me because I've spent a lot of time really trying to understand the ovary and our eggs. So our eggs, there's a part of every cell called the mitochondria, and the mitochondria are like the battery of the cell. The part of the body that has the most amount of mitochondria are our eggs that live inside our ovaries. And the eggs is what is going to fertilize, obviously, with a sperm and create a human. The egg that created you was actually developed when your mom was being developed inside your grandma. And your grandma was being developed inside her mother, and so on and so forth. So the thing that connects all women is the egg, because it connects you to your grandma, your great-grandma, your great-great-grandma. It's that lineage. And then out of that, the egg is so incredibly smart that the egg actually, when it's released from the ovary, sends a chemical message to the sperm that are coming at it, and it reads which sperm is going to be the best and the most viable to invite into the egg. That is how crazy powerful we are. So there is no doubt to my brain from a physiological level that those eggs are ancestral. Those eggs are our connection to every single woman that came before us. And the pain, the suffering, the challenges, the joys, everything that was experienced by your great-grandmother and your great-great-great-grandmother, that is all coming through in the thing that made you. So you were literally made from the ancestral energy and the genetic material of every single woman in your past, which is just mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing.
Okay. So now let's say, why now? I think, and this is beyond my fasting brain, but I have been really upset and trying to understand our healthcare system. We have a patriarchal healthcare system. And we have a patriarchal corporate system. I mean, we live in a patriarchal paced world. Everything has this patriarchal structure to it. And it would be very easy for us to say, oh my gosh, like patriarch means man. But I don't look at it as man versus woman. I look at the patriarch as it's a system over us. It's power over us. And women have been at the cost of this power structure over us for many different reasons. The rebirth of what's happening to humanity right now is we're moving and breaking apart that patriarchal system. And you can feel it in conversations like this. You can feel it when you're together with other women that are finally saying, no more. I'm not going to work this hard. I'm not going to put up with being gaslit in my doctor's office. I'm not going to allow this power over me to exist anymore. That is what's happening to a lot of women right now. And it's causing a shift into a more matriarchal society. And I've spent a lot of time recently really asking myself, well, what then is a matriarchal society? Is this where women lead? And the answer is no. What a matriarchal society is its power within. So as women specifically, and even some men, start to reject the power over patriarchal society, that only swings us to the power within. And when we tap to the power within, we are now shedding light on all of the ancestral traumas that every woman that came before us dealt with. And I think that is why you are seeing women having to address these traumas. And it's both people, but I'm seeing a lot with women.
Right. Yes. Oh my God. Oh, there's so much I want to say. So, okay. So I've got 2 kids and I'm 43, right? So I'm an older mum. I think they call me, I was geriatric, then I was advanced geriatric, you know.
They have a name for you?
Oh yeah. Oh no, they don't call you that. I wrote that in my book, right? Because I actually touch on, this isn't what my new book's about, but there's a bit of postpartum rage and sacred rage and why it's important, and lots of ancestral healing in that. So anyway, often I would go to the doctors. I had pelvic prolapse after having my daughter. And it was the biggest igniter of feminine power ever.
Oh, yeah.
It happened at the end of literally a 7-year journey of healing the mother line. And it's the work I do now in the world. So it was like the web of support. Anyway, going to the doctor, gaslit. It's just what happens when you have a baby.
Yep.
What I think is different now is this rage that is bubbling within us. That is saying no. And I know in my work, I'm called more and more and more for us to find ways to process that rage and process that grief that is not just ours, you know? And I think I'm also in this unique position. I've seen a lot of older mums in this position where we have had children later on in life. So we have they say that's the biggest hormonal change in your life, getting pregnant. And then postpartum, again, you go through it in quick succession. While also, like, I'm not sure. I thought it was just postpartum, but even my youngest is almost 2 now, and I'm starting to still. It's not extreme, but I'm feeling a lot of perimenopause symptoms, like sweating at night and sex drive not being what it was, and all of that. And I was sure it was postpartum, but I'm like, maybe it's not. And I think there's this unique thing with older mums right now where, because I know also hormonally when you're in that phase of menopause, perimenopause, you're not meant to self-sacrifice. Like that's actually it's biology. But you've got these young kids around. And so, I think it's interesting.
Okay, I have a couple of things to say on this.
Please.
I love this conversation because these are the things that aren't getting discussed enough. For starters, what I'm learning in my own journey as now I'm postmenopausal, and I've been doing a lot of deep inner work in the last couple of years, and I haven't had a healthy relationship with rage. And what I'm learning now is that anger is actually me putting up my boundaries. And that it's when the anger comes out, it's me protecting myself and saying no more will I put everybody's needs ahead of my own. And I think there's an aspect of when you say there's a lot of rage happening for a lot of women right now, I think there is an awakening as we move to this more matriarchal lens in which we see that the power is within. A lot of women are like, enough already. And now it's time to protect myself. So from a conceptual lens, that's how I look at rage. Now, from a brain lens, something that's really fascinating, and this is based off Lisa Mosconi's work, and she is the top female brain researcher in the world. And she states that there are 3 times that the female brain changes. And the first is at puberty, the second is postpartum, and the third is at perimenopause. And if you understand, I'll walk through these changes, because if you understand these changes, you actually start to have this incredible respect for how miraculous the female body is. And these changes happen because of hormonal changes. So when a girl gets her period and all those hormones come in, there are neurons in the brain that get pruned away. Those are the neurons at that age that told you were dependent upon somebody. And the new neurons that form in puberty is a brain that says, I can live on my own. Now, ask anybody who parents a teenager. They will tell you how fun that is to work with parenting a child whose brain is losing that I'm dependent on you. And now, I'm independent. So that's the whole teenage thing. Postpartum, super fascinating. The part of the brain that helped you remember where your keys were, that helped you keep a task list going in your brain, all of the educated part that you needed for day-to-day activity, it's not needed now. And so the hormones that crash in postpartum prunes away the neurons that are no longer necessary, so that the neurons that can kick in are neurons of intuition. Because what a postpartum woman needs is a brain that can read the cues of her baby. But what other cues is she reading? What else is she tapping into? Because her intuition is so heightened. So rage could show up there because maybe intuitively she sees situations that she didn't realize were not working for her. And so that rage shows up.
That's really interesting as well, because I think what happened to me the first time around with my son, I'm a sensitive. I've always been in touch with the other world. Like, that's just who I am. It was also at a time, it was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks before lockdown, COVID. So the whole world was going through something very painful,
Yes.
I think that opening and that kind of like lifting of the veil for me was like, I literally went deeper through the veils, through ancestral healing, through collective. Like, I was processing it all through my body. Literally, at nighttime, my body was shaking and I could feel it was like my cells were releasing and attempting to process. It was so physical.
That is so cool. So think about this, we label, like some people would, we label that postpartum, not what your experience, but we label a woman who is low in her energy postpartum as postpartum depression. Right. But really, she just,
I resonate with that, but I also think, that is a lens I could have looked at this through. Like, I definitely felt depressed, but I also felt like I was going through an extreme initiation. Yeah. And I felt like, looking back, I'm like, maybe I could have done with some more support. That type of support to acknowledge what I was going through did not exist.
Right.
I have access to incredible people in the world, but even still, people didn't understand it. Whereas I know that in other civilizations that are more connected to the sacred and initiation, it would have been honored and revered for what my body was going through. And that is what our society lacks.
Yeah. And so
we get a condition.
Yeah. And then we get medicated. So your brain postpartum reorganized itself to have this heightened intuition. You already had a heightened awareness. So you got an upgrade that was even bigger than anything you had ever experienced. But if with that comes a mood drop, maybe because you're realizing things about your life or yourself that you're trying to process, we medicate it. And so we put you on medication, an antidepressant, to lift you back up again, because in our world, we don't love we like our women to be even keeled. We don't like our women to be in rage. We don't like our women to be in sadness. We like women to be ladylike and to be in a very neutral state of emotions. So at that period, that's a very uncomfortable thing for society. The one that is really blowing me away, and this actually is what I'm going to write about in my next book, is what happens at perimenopause, because there's another brain remodel that happens. The neurons, the people-pleasing neurons, you're probably getting close to this at 43. The people-pleasing neurons where you really cared what other people thought of you, those go away. And you grow a brain that has a more collective societal lens. It's actually a hypothesis called the grandmother hypothesis. And the idea was that back in the hunter-gatherer days, that when the men and the older children went off to hunt, there was one woman left behind, and that was the mother who was either pregnant or taking care of a small child. So in order for her to stay alive, the grandmother had to stay back. So the postmenopausal brain reorganized itself to see the collective good and to understand what the needs of the tribe was that stayed back home. And she would go forage for food. She would take care of the mother. So we actually build a brain in perimenopause that is the most useful brain for society because it has a wider lens than any other brain. Now, in each one of these brain changes, what's happening is there is a self-discovery. There is a going in to who you were meant to be. There is a going into the ancestral women that you came from. And each one of these is an opportunity to get to know yourself differently. So that to me squares up with what your experience was with postpartum. And I can't wait to see what happens to you when you go through perimenopause.
Well, it's interesting. I'm loving all the science with the mystical connection between the two of us, because I actually I connected with a group of guides that introduced themselves as the ancient grandmothers of the earth, which really triggered all the motherline healing work. And it's literally the past 7 years what I've been working with as I've been going through all of those very personal changes. And I literally, in my new book, it's finally, I'm talking about it, like I've stabilized the energy in my system. Amazing. But it was cellular, cellular. And I think from what I'm seeing with my people is that so many of us we've had earlier stages of awakening where I call it the ascent, where it's like an expansion of like, whoa, look at this whole new world and heightened visions and amazingness. And then right now, so many of us are going into this phase that I call the descent, descending into the body, into the cells, into back to humanity, back to the earth. And we're seeing, that's what I want to talk to you about. We're seeing how severed we've been from the earth. Now, if anyone knows me, they'll know how obsessed I am with plants. Like I could just cry about like flowers, herbs, but I'm particularly passionate about weeds. And I've studied a lot about plant consciousness, herbalism, etc. And two of the weeds, the herbs that I have worked with intimately through my journey, which actually really deepened my connection to ancestors, because you can see I'm from European descent. Those wisdom teachings severed, and anyway, so it's been so healing for me to work with particularly these ancient weeds like nettle and then dandelion. Now,
oh my God, you know what? They're both for the liver. They're both helpful to support the liver.
Right. They both grow. Like the thing that makes them a weed is that you can't restrain them.
Yes.
And I just think it's so interesting that now, like for me, those two herbs have been the herbs that I've needed the most. Like I read your first book and you're like, can you find some dandelion leaves? I'm like, yeah, we all can. They're on the side of the highway. Like, guys, you don't have to order the stuff online from some other country. Like it's there. It's there. Oh my God. It's there. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So I have so many things to say on this. And I almost want to get on a plane and hop across the ocean and have this conversation with you, because here's what was interesting with Fast Like a Girl. The principles I taught in there, I had already been doing in my clinic for years. I knew they worked. And then I taught it on my YouTube channel and I knew it worked for millions of women. But once the book came out, you never really know how the world's going to receive something and what the feedback will be. And one of the biggest feedbacks that I saw was for women was when you took a rest from food, this beautiful body we get to live in started to heal itself. But the major challenge we had was then women reached out to us and said, I don't know what to do with food. I know that I've now learned that fasting can tap into an inner healing, but I have such a dysfunctional relationship with food. And when you start to break that down, you're back at this patriarchal system that says you need to weigh a certain size. You need to look, you need to look a certain way. You need to be beautiful in order to be acceptable to the culture. And so all the diet culture and all the diets we've been on and the quick fixes we've gone for have been to pacify the patriarch, if we go back to that place. So women don't know what to do when it comes to food. So in Eat Like a Girl, one of the things that I knew I had to come back to was finding a way for women to understand that this earth we're living on has provided us so many opportunities to nourish the organs that balance our hormones, and the liver is one of them. So in Eat Like a Girl, I ended up pairing, I have two chefs that did professional chefs that did the recipes, and one of them is a plant-based chef. And she's the master chef for the Four Seasons Hotel. And the first time I sat with her, she said to me, I am on a quest to figure out how to make recipes for the 23,000 edible foods that are on this planet. And I said back to her, I bet if we broke 23,000 of these foods down, we would see how they nourish the female body in order to be able to keep our hormones in the age-appropriate balance that they were meant to be. So, for example, the liver and the gut break down estrogen. So it's not enough just to make estrogen. You have to have your liver and your gut in tip-top shape to metabolize estrogen and reformat it so that it can get into your cells to create all the miracles that estrogen does for every single organ system. Every single organ system, every single joint, every single tissue in our body has a receptor site for estrogen. So estrogen isn't just to release an egg. She releases an egg and then she has to be metabolized so she can go to work and nourish all of these other organ systems in our body. And the way she gets metabolized is by helping the liver and the gut. So we're back at the dandelion and the nettles. When you're eating those two, you're nourishing the liver so it can do its job to reformat estrogen so estrogen can do her job. So when you start to break this down, it's like the female body, I believe, even more than the male body, has this intimate relationship with the earth and what is coming out of the earth. And if the moment we are at right now is a time for women to start to reconnect to the earth in as many different ways as possible. And if that means picking dandelion greens out of the cracks in the concrete, do it.
It's so good. And it's even just like what you'll find. This is the thing that blows my mind. Well, there's two things. One is like if you open your eyes to it, you will see that nature delivers. I've got in my herbalism training, I learned, I read something, I don't know who to credit it to. I've tried to find it since, but it was essentially this teaching, this science-based teaching that said the land often delivers. If you consciously connect with the land, they've done studies where the land delivers what the people on the land who are consciously connecting to it need. Now, I have a black and white proof, scientific study of one of that,
And
right?
of one. It's important.
Of one. But it was so clear. So I told you I had pelvic prolapse after having Goldie, and I've had great support around it, and I'm like on the road to recovery. One of the plants that I was advised to use was a plant called lady's mantle, which I hadn't actually worked with before. If you look at it, it kind of looks like this like umbrella that's like soft, kind of like the pelvic floor, and it cradles. Anyway, I do find that often nature looks like what it's going to do in your body. Right.
Like heels like.
So I started looking into Ladies Mantle. I went to my local herbalist shop, ordered some in, drinking the tea, doing baths, then literally within 2 weeks of using it every single day, it started growing in my garden.
Whoa.
It now grows multiple, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I pick them every single week. My son and I pick them. It was not there before.
That is crazy.
And this is the amazing thing about nature. When you consciously connect with it,
bingo,
your mind will be blown.
So I love that story, because this is where I'm wanting to take women to. I feel like with Fast Like a Girl, what I was trying to help women see is that your body heals itself, and it heals itself in the absence of food, and women have to do that different than men. With Eat Like a Girl, I've really wanted to help women start to see that our relationship with food could be really nourishing. And if you understand what foods to lean into, you will see that there are so many foods that the earth has provided that nourishes our feminine body. And the minute we shy away from nature's food, so I call it in the book, nature's carbs, for example, the ketogenic movement shot off like a rocket, and people were like, oh my God, I'm losing weight. This is amazing. I shouldn't eat any carbs. I started to tell people, no, I believe in something called ketobiotic, where you are eating carbs, but you're making sure they're nature's carbs, because nature's carbs are nourishing to the female body. So
as in sweet potato, vegetables, that kind of thing. Yeah.
The sweet potato is the greatest gift to the female body. Sweet potatoes, any kind of fiber, any kind of green, it will feed a set of bacteria in our gut called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome is what are these bacteria that break down estrogen and metabolize estrogen. We've got nuts and seeds are incredible. We've even got a lot of spices, like cloves are some of the highest, have the highest prebiotic power, which feeds the estrobolome. Anything fermented can actually activate the vagus nerve and help us release oxytocin. Like when you start to break down the power of food on the female body, you'll literally never walk into a grocery store again. You will only want to either grow a garden or be at your farmer's markets, because you start to realize that the female body has to be in sync with the earth. And when it doesn't, that's when disease starts to form.
Wow. Okay. Last little section that I just want to touch on is, because I know you wrote a book called The Menopause Reset. Am I right?
Yeah.
With that? I've not read that one yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But can you just tell me, because I know as I said, feel like I'm teetering into that world.
Yeah,
and,
I love it.
Oh my God, it just feels so complicated. Like some
Yes.
people are saying HRT, some people are saying this. I've been reading a couple books, and it's just like, oh my
Yes.
God, I just feel overwhelmed. Like,
Yes.
what would you suggest for, because I know many of my listeners are around that phase of life as well.
Amazing. Okay. So the Menopause Reset was actually my patients, and my online community was like, what are you doing? When I was in my 40s, they were like, what are you doing for perimenopause? And so I put it in a book. And I'm going to make it really simple. So there are 5 lifestyle changes that need to happen after 40. Because at 40, what is happening is your ovaries are starting to go into retirement. They're like, hey, we've been doing this a long time. So we're going to take the next 10 to 15 years, and we're going to slowly stop producing as many of these hormones. One of the things that happens in that moment is that it actually relies on our adrenal glands to start to make some of these hormones. So it starts to partner with our adrenal glands and it partners with our peripheral tissues. So instead of being an individual that was controlling all these hormones, it starts to pull in a team. Because of that, there are 5 changes you need to make. The first is fasting. And a large reason that I recommend intermittent fasting for women over 40 is that the brain will start to become less sensitive to glucose and more sensitive to ketones. So you'll find that your mental clarity comes back on when you start to make ketones, and the best way to do that is through fasting. Number 2 is a concept I carried forward in Eat Like a Girl, which is we need to start to look at eating a more diverse type of foods. So most people eat the same 100 foods over and over and over again. I'm encouraging women after 40 to really expand their palate. So if you always make a salad with romaine lettuce, time to try some spinach, time to put some dandelion greens in there, time to put some parsley. If you cook poultry every single night, time to think about maybe some venison or getting amino acids from grass-fed beef. Like, we need to be more diverse in our food selection, because in that diversity, we feed the microbiome, but we also bring in nutrients that help us support healthy hormones. Third one is we have to really start detoxing and pulling the toxins out. As your hormones go down in perimenopause, you're more sensitive to toxins. So the lipstick, the perfume, your favorite shampoo or makeup that was toxic before in your 30s may have not affected you as much. But in your 40s and your 50s, you're becoming more sensitive to those toxins, which it's really important to stop bringing the toxins in. So know your beauty products, know the chemicals in your food, the chemicals in your cleaners. Number 4 is you've got to start feeding your microbiome. So this is the polyphenol foods, probiotic foods, prebiotic foods. I list them all out in Eat Like a Girl. And then the last one is my favorite one, and I can't take credit for it. It was another Hay House author, Libby Weaver, wrote a book called Rushing Woman Syndrome. And I say as we move into our 40s and 50s, we have to stop the rushing woman syndrome. We need more time for rest. So you've got to stop working out so hard. You've got to stop overscheduling yourself. Like, your feminine body is screaming for rest because you're losing progesterone. And progesterone brought with her GABA, and GABA what calms us. So as complicated as that may sound, it's actually not that complicated. It's like, start fasting, vary your foods, feed your microbiome, watch your toxic load, and rest. And if you do that, your journey into this incredible postmenopausal time, which really should be an initiation into wisdom and elderhood, will be so much smoother. But again, what we're recommending is put in more hormones. I'm not opposed to HRT, but it doesn't give you a free pass from those 5 lifestyle changes.
So it's like you got to do all those things, and then yeah. Amazing. All right. Well, I've just loved this conversation, and I could definitely keep going, but we are going to complete until next time. I want to ask you a couple of quick questions. So,
Great.
What is God to you?
Ooh. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story of what God is through the lens of my children. When my kids were little, we went to church, and we went to a Science of Mind church, was the church that we were going to. And one day, my son was throwing a fit. He must have been like 6 or 7. I don't want to go to church. I hate church. I hate God. And my daughter, who is 2 years older than him, was 7 at the time, and turns around and looks at him and says, well, that's really silly because you are God. So that would be like hating yourself.
Whoa.
And I was like, we're going to church because somebody got the message.
That's awesome.
So
the next
to me,
Hay House author.
That's right. To me, God is in all of us. It's the energy that moves us. It's the energy you tap into when you're fasting. It's the energy that gives you a hunch that you should do something different in your life. It is the energy that guides you when your educated brain can't find the answer. That is what God is to me.
Beautiful. So talking about energy, I've just gotten back from America, as you know, and I was recording a course with Curtis and Laura, and we were talking about start times, and they're like, well, it really depends on you. I mean, we've got Deborah, Dr. E, who we both know, who starts at midday because she goes to bed at 4. But Dr. Mindy is like on, and she'll do long days or whatever. And this is what I've heard from you. I know from...
Did Dr. E say
Dr.
that?
E. No. That's what like Laura said, I think. But I know from Dr. E, she told me that you're a type 7 on the Enneagram.
Yeah, I'm a 7.
Right? Yeah. And everyone who speaks of you is like, she's got this fierce energy. I remember teaching at I was on stage after you just at was it Arizona? Yeah, main stage at Arizona. Yeah, and it was like, whoa. That you were so known for that. And I know that in your work, it's about boosting energy, boosting life force. Like, what is that to me? What to you? What is life force? What is energy?
Yeah. So, the way I look at it is that there is an infinite amount of energy we can tap into. And I'm a believer that the cleaner we keep our body, the more we keep our body and our cells open, the more we can pull energy from anywhere, and we can pull that energy in. So I know that like I'm living my healthiest self when I have that abundant energy. So it's really, for me, it comes from taking incredible care of this vessel that I get to walk around in. Now, I will tell you, I also have an on and off switch. So I'll be 55, I turn 55 next week. And as I've gotten older, I have taken the first 2 hours of my day, and that is me time. I meditate, I read, I talk to people that fill me up. I start my day by filling myself up first so that I can pour into others. And to me, that's life force. It's coming to, you are the well. You are the source. So what are you doing to take incredible care of your body and also give to yourself? And if you start that way every single day, you will then have infinite energy to give to others. But as women, we often do the opposite. We're like, I got to take care of the kids. I got to take care of the home. I got to do everything else for everybody else. And then let me see if I have some time to go and work out, or let me see if I have some time to read that book. I do the opposite. I say, take care of me first and my body and my mind, and then I can pour into others.
Yes, beautiful. And then finally, what returns you to the wisdom within?
Well, this is why I love fasting. I hear the wisdom within. I mean, I hear the wisdom within when I fast. I will say, this is the way I always explain myself, that I was born very connected to my body. And so anything, walking, hiking, I've gotten really into rucking lately, where you put like a weighted vest on and you go hike. Anything
That's amazing. Is that like a weighted blanket to exercise
yes,
with?
It's like a weighted blanket, but you put it on your body and then you go. Yeah, there's a whole reason why postmenopausal women, it's incredible for. But anything I do that connects me to my body is where I find wisdom. That's where the wisdom lives. But anytime I'm like in my head trying to do the shoulds and the, what ifs and I do everything for everybody else, now I've disconnected from my body. And I actually spent a lot of time a couple of years ago asking myself what burnout was. And I finally came to the conclusion that burnout is when I'm too much in my head and not enough in my body. And so for me, wisdom is in the body.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Mindy. It's been incredible. We have gone deep, we've gone high, we've gone wide.
I love this.
I want you all to check out all of Dr. Mindy's work. I'm going to check out the Menopause Reset book, but I can really, really recommend the Fast Like a Girl and her new cookbook. I cannot wait to find those dandelion leaves in that book.
It's great. The recipes are off the hook, so I'm excited for everybody to experience them.